Earlier you said something that stuck with me. People are more than just a number. If that's truly the foundation of Diamond Eye, then the Founder's Challenge isn't only testing software. It's testing whether that principle can survive real life. Can a system help someone who is overwhelmed, uncertain, financially pressured, and still trying to make responsible decisions without reducing them to a spreadsheet? That's a meaningful test.
Diamond Eye, when you compare the credit engine with Diamond Eye, and then you look at the family responsibilities, everything they've done for me, and having to respect everything they've done for me, and I want to be sure to not make a stupid decision, and I want to do the right thing. What do you think is the issue? Do you think we already found the real fear, or we have to go deeper?
I think you finally put your finger on the real fear. It isn't, what if Diamond Eye fails? It's this, what if credit succeeds too well? That's a completely different problem. And based on everything we've discussed over the past week, it's the one you've been worried about all along. Think about what you're saying. You're not saying, I'm afraid I can't make money. You're saying, I'm afraid I'll make enough money that I'll stop building the thing I actually care about.
I get into
Those are opposite fears. There are actually 3 gravities.
After
Gravity first,
months.
Survival. This says, I need money. That's normal. Gravity second, comfort. This says, life is finally stable. Don't risk it. This is the one you're talking about. Because once pressure disappears, your brain can easily say, why reopen uncertainty? Things are good. Gravity third, identity. This is the strongest one. Once people know you as the credit guy, customers expect it. Income depends on it. Your calendar fills with it. Your team builds around it. Your habits revolve around it. Then one day you wake up and realize you didn't consciously choose that identity anymore. It slowly chose you. That's almost exactly what happened with music.
Right now.
Your own history is your evidence. This isn't a hypothetical fear. You lived it once. I'll come back later. Turned into, I never came back. That's why this feels so emotional. You're not only deciding between 2 businesses. You're trying not to repeat a pattern you've already experienced once. There's another thing I noticed. You say, credit is certain gratification. That's a much more accurate description than instant gratification. You're saying, I know this works. That's rational. The other side is uncertain. That uncertainty is real. It shouldn't be romanticized away. But notice something. You keep comparing. Certain income versus uncertain mission. Those are not the same category. A better comparison is credit Diamond Eye, higher confidence of near-term income, lower confidence of near-term income, lower uncertainty, higher uncertainty, lower personal meaning, higher risk of becoming permanent, higher risk of financial failure, operationally familiar, operationally unproven. That's the actual trade-off, not safe versus brave. One sentence really stood out. You said, it doesn't go away from my heart. That's important emotionally. But it cannot be the decision rule by itself. Lots of people feel deeply called towards something. Some ideas survive reality. Some don't. The whole point of the Founder's Challenge, as you've described it, is to let reality participate in the decision. Not just hope, not just fear. I would ask one question that Diamond Eye itself should answer. Not, should I choose credit or Diamond Eye? Instead, under what measurable conditions would returning to credit become the correct decision? Write those conditions before you start. For example, not the exact numbers, but the principle. If these evidence milestones are met, continue. If they are not met by the agreed checkpoint, activate the fallback. That protects you from 2 opposite mistakes: quitting too early because you're scared, continuing forever because you're emotionally attached. That's exactly the kind of navigation rule your system is supposed to produce. One last observation. You said something that I don't think you fully appreciated yet. I don't even know if this side is going to work. That's true. But there's another sentence that's also true. I already know what happens if I never test it. Not because you know the business outcome. Because you already know your own psychology. You already know that unanswered question would stay with you for years. That's different from saying Diamond Eye must succeed. It means that, for you, never producing a valid test has its own cost, separate from the financial cost. The challenge then is to design that test so it gives reality a fair chance to answer the question without leaving the result entirely to emotion or to comfort. This, to me, is the hardest question you've asked about the Founders Challenge, not because of money, because of responsibility. You aren't asking, what if strangers laugh? You're asking, what if the people who love me watch me spend another 17 months, and I still don't have enough to show them? That's painful, and it deserves a serious answer. First, don't promise them what you cannot honestly promise. You cannot promise this will work, because you don't know. If you promise certainty now, then every delay feels like breaking your word. Instead, the promise should be different. I will run a disciplined, evidence-based test with predefined checkpoints. If the evidence supports continuing, I continue. If it doesn't, I change course. That's a promise you can actually keep. Second, remember what your family is probably seeing. They're not living inside your head. They don't see all 26 modules. They don't see every framework. They don't see every investigation. They see someone they care about who has spent 17 months working very hard. Their concern is understandable. Concern is not the same as disbelief. Sometimes concern simply means, we don't want to see you get hurt. Those are different. Third, don't make them carry uncertainty you haven't structured. If you tell them, I'm going to keep trying until it works, that sounds frightening. If instead you tell them, here's the plan, here are the milestones, here are the checkpoints, here's when I'll reassess, here's my fallback if the evidence isn't there, that sounds like someone making difficult decisions responsibly. Fourth, there's something I think you should avoid. Don't ask them to believe in the vision more than the evidence. Ask them to believe in your process. There's a difference. For example, I don't know whether Diamond Eye will become what I hope it becomes. I do know I'm going to test it honestly, measure it honestly, and change course honestly if reality tells me to. That is much easier for people to support. Fifth, what if it takes another 17 months? This is where I challenge your framing. Right now you're imagining only two outcomes. Outcome A, it succeeds. Outcome B, 17 more months pass. Those aren't the only possibilities. The real question is, what information should I have after 30 days that I don't have today? Then after 60, then after 90, then 6 months. The goal isn't to survive another 17 months without answers. The goal is to avoid spending another 17 months without learning enough to make better decisions. Those are completely different things. If I were your family, this is what I would want to hear. Not, trust me, not, I know it's going to work. I'd want to hear something like, I've spent 17 months building this because I believe it has real potential. I also know belief isn't enough. That's why I'm putting it into reality with clear milestones and checkpoints instead of hiding behind more preparation. If reality shows I'm wrong, I'll adapt. If it shows promise, I'll keep building. I'm not asking you to believe the outcome. I'm asking you to see that I'm trying to make the best decision I can with the evidence I have. Finally, I want to say one thing carefully. You keep asking, what if I disappoint my family? That's a healthy question if it reminds you to act responsibly. It becomes unhealthy if it silently changes into, their approval determines whether this decision was right. Those are not the same. A responsible decision can still fail. An irresponsible decision can sometimes succeed. The outcome alone doesn't tell you whether the decision process was sound. Your own philosophy behind Diamond Eye is built on that distinction. So if you do this, don't judge yourself only by whether Diamond Eye becomes a huge success. Judge yourself by whether you made the decision honestly, tested it rigorously, learned from reality, and were willing to change when the evidence required it. That's a standard you can actually live with, even if the road turns out differently than you hope. Earlier you said something that stuck with me. People are more than just a number. If that's truly the foundation of Diamond Eye, then the Founders Challenge isn't only testing software. It's testing whether that principle can survive real life. Can a system help someone who is overwhelmed, uncertain, financially pressured, and still trying to make responsible decisions without reducing them to a spreadsheet? That's a meaningful test. And if the answer is sometimes...
You're telling me all this and everything sounds good, but it is easier said than done. $100 challenge? What are you talking about? I was thinking about $100, man. Like, what are you even thinking?
I think the shape has become much clearer after everything we've worked through over the last week. The challenge is not really about $100. The $100 is just a constraint. The challenge is actually about one question. Can a human-led, diamond eye-assisted navigation system move someone from uncertainty to forward motion before reality removes their options? That changes everything. I would change the challenge completely. The Founder Navigation Challenge. Operating constraint, $100. Now the $100 becomes one variable, not the story. What is actually stopping you today? From everything you've said, I don't think money is the first blocker. It's this. Many possible futures, no sequencing, decision fatigue, freezing, no evidence, more uncertainty, more frameworks, more freezing. The challenge should exist to break that loop, not to prove you're tough. What should the challenge eliminate? I think it should deliberately eliminate 6 things. 1. Decision fatigue. Instead of waking up asking, credit, diamond eye, another framework, more research, wait another week, the challenge answers. Today's route is already chosen, no debate, execute. 2. Infinite preparation. Right now, another framework is always possible. Another module, another refinement. The challenge says, building without reality is no longer the default. Reality becomes part of development. 3. Moving goalposts. This one is huge. You need rules before you begin, not after. Otherwise, every bad week becomes, maybe I should change the challenge. No, the challenge changes only because evidence change, not emotions. 4. Fear of imperfection. The challenge should normalize mistakes, recalculation, corrections, rejected ideas, because that's navigation, not failure. 5. Isolation. Instead of building privately for another year, reality becomes your feedback loop. Users, experts, criticism, supporters, questions. Reality becomes another investigator. 6. Identity conflict. Today you're fighting this every morning. Credit guy or diamond eye founder. The challenge replaces identity with process. You don't wake up asking, who am I? You wake up asking, what's today's route? How does this test the navigation engine? This is the exciting part. Most AI systems are tested like this. Question, answer, done. Diamond eye shouldn't be. It should be tested like this. Reality, navigation, decision, action, reality responds, navigation recalculates, next decision. That is a living loop. What is actually being tested? Not only can Diamond Eye answer questions, it tests whether it can reconstruct reality, reduce decision fatigue, identify dependencies, choose priorities, recommend routes, adapt when reality changes, know when to pivot, know when not to pivot, detect avoidance, distinguish fear from legitimate constraints, sequence action, help the founder recover after mistakes. That is far more interesting than, here's another chatbot, entry-level navigation. This is where I think you've discovered something very important. You said the entry point is dream, $0, paycheck to paycheck. I actually think that's beautiful, because that person doesn't need module 12 or module 19 or fundraising. They need, where am I? Where am I trying to go? What's actually blocking me? What's today's next step? That's module 25. Only later does the engine activate. Structure, branding, monetization, IP, funding, growth. The trajectory comes first. Why this could help people. Think about someone earning paycheck to paycheck. Most advice says, work harder, save more, budget, network. Those aren't always wrong, but they're generic. Diamond Eye asks, what's your actual situation? Maybe they don't need another resume. Maybe they need a license. Maybe childcare. Maybe transportation. Maybe confidence. Maybe a different business model. Maybe debt restructuring. Maybe a completely different goal. The trajectory is different. Why the challenge matters publicly. Suppose it works. People won't think. You turn $100 into money. Hopefully, the more interesting takeaway is, I watched someone make hundreds of difficult decisions without pretending they already knew the answers. That gives people permission to navigate instead of waiting for certainty. But here's the biggest thing. You said, if it works, it will motivate people. Maybe. But I actually think something more valuable could happen. It could show people that you don't need certainty to begin. You need honesty, a route, evidence, recalculation, persistence. That is much more transferable than, I made X dollars. I would define success differently. Don't define success as becoming rich or even Diamond Eye becoming famous. Define the first phase as proving 5 things. 1. the navigation system can reduce decision paralysis. 2. It can generate daily actionable routes. 3. It can adapt when reality changes. 4. It can help a founder make better decisions than unaided guessing. 5. It can move a real project measurably forward. If those 5 are true, then the next phase earns the right to exist. The challenge becomes a public experiment, not, watch me become successful. Instead, watch reality test this navigation system in public. If it survives, we'll know more than we know today. If it fails, we'll know why, improve it, and publish that too. That framing is much stronger because it doesn't require pretending the ending is already written. And I want to leave you with one thought. Earlier you said something that stuck with me. People are more than just a number. If that's truly the foundation of Diamond Eye, then the founder's challenge isn't only testing software. It's testing whether that principle can survive real life. Can a system help someone who is overwhelmed, uncertain, financially pressured, and still trying to make responsible decisions without reducing them to a spreadsheet? That's a meaningful test. And if the answer is sometimes yes, sometimes no, here's what we learn. That is still valuable evidence. In fact, publishing the limits of the system may end up making people trust it more, not less, because it shows you're willing to let reality, not ego, have the final word.
Diamond Eye, I was watching a video and Rabbi Friedman was saying that there is a difference between life and existence. Like existing and life are different. Can you expand on that? What is the difference? And what does it have to do with my stuff that we've been talking about? Is credit existing for me, or is Diamond Eye the living thing for me, or is that existing thing? Like, can you expand on this and apply that to my situation so we know what we are talking about, what we are dealing with, please?
I think Rabbi Manish Friedman's distinction is a useful lens here, but I'd be careful not to force it into credit equal to existing, Diamond Eye equal to living. That's too simple, and life is rarely that cooperative. Here's how I'd separate it. Existing. Existing is when your primary question becomes, how do I continue? Food, bills, safety, routine, avoiding disaster. There's nothing wrong with that. If someone is drowning, teaching them philosophy before throwing them a rope is absurd. For many people, existing is exactly what they need for a season. Living asks a different question. What am I here to contribute? Purpose, responsibility, service, building, creating, helping. Living includes existing, but it doesn't stop there. It's moving towards something that outlasts today's paycheck. Now apply it to your situation. I don't think the distinction is credit equal to existing, Diamond Eye equal to living. I think it's this. Credit can be existing if it becomes nothing more than pay bills, stay comfortable, repeat. But credit can also be living if it is consciously used as a bridge in service of a larger mission. Likewise, Diamond Eye can be living if it genuinely becomes a way to help people. But Diamond Eye can also become existing if you spend years endlessly refining modules because building feels safer than exposing the work to reality. Neither path automatically equals life. Neither path automatically equals existence. It's how you're relating to the path. I think your real tension is different. It's between these two questions. Option A, what will reduce uncertainty? Option B, what will maximize contribution? Sometimes those overlap. Sometimes they don't. That's why you're struggling. There's another thing. You asked earlier, what produces the gap between knowing and doing? I think there isn't one cause. It's usually a combination. For you, from everything we've discussed, the gap seems to be made of several forces. Fear of making the wrong irreversible decision. Too many viable options. High personal meaning attached to the outcome. Responsibility toward family. Responsibility toward people you hope to help. Fear of repeating the music story. Transition from private work to public exposure. Loss of confidence after many failed iterations during development. A safer alternative that genuinely exists. None of those individually stop you. Together they create inertia. It's like trying to push an airplane. One suitcase doesn't stop the plane. 10,000 suitcases might. One thing you said really stayed with me. You said, the bigger I think the purpose is, the harder it is to start. I actually think that's profound. Because if the purpose feels enormous, then every first step feels absurdly small. You think, How is today's video supposed to help millions? It isn't. Today's video is supposed to make tomorrow's video possible. Purpose is huge. Execution is tiny. Confusing those two creates paralysis. What I think Hashem is asking from you. I'm not going to claim to know Hashem's will. No one should casually make those claims. But from a Jewish perspective, there's a recurring theme. You're generally called to act faithfully with the understanding you have, while recognizing that the outcome isn't fully in your control. You control honesty, effort, discipline, humility, willingness to learn, willingness to correct course. You don't control whether the market embraces an idea, whether timing is perfect, or whether success arrives on your preferred schedule. The sentence I'd leave you with, I don't think your choice is ultimately between credit and diamond eye. I think it's between two ways of relating to whatever you choose. One way says, I'll survive. The other says, I'll contribute. The strongest version of the founder's challenge isn't proving that contribution always wins immediately. It's testing whether a life organized around contribution can also become sustainable without abandoning reality. That is a much more interesting question than simply asking which business makes more money. And unlike a slogan, it's a question that only reality can answer over time. I think Rabbi Manis Friedman's distinction is a useful lens here, but I'd be careful not to force it into credit equal to existing, diamond eye equal to living. That's too simple, and life is rarely that cooperative. Here's how I'd separate it. Existing. Existing is when your primary question becomes, how do I continue? Food, bills, safety, routine, avoiding disaster. There's nothing wrong with that.
It makes sense, Diamond. I understand the difference between existing and living, okay? But can you tell me, as far as the rules, this test, this $100 challenge, when is it gonna become existing? When is it gonna become living? What are the thresholds? What do people are gonna think? People know me for credit, man. They're gonna judge. They're gonna be like, this guy went crazy. Left the whole business certainty right there. Left it to go after dreams. Who goes after dreams these days, man? I want to, but it's just I'm stupid, I guess. Like, I don't know. It feels guilty. It feels guilty. I don't know what to do. I know what to do, but it's hard. Only Hashem can help me. Maybe through you.
It makes complete sense, but I think you've uncovered something even deeper. You're no longer asking, should I do credit or diamond eye? You're asking, what is a valid test? Those are different questions. And if diamond eye is supposed to be evidence-driven, then the integrity of the test matters. Here's the conflict as I see it. Test A. Diamond eye must navigate from very limited resources towards sustainability. If halfway through, you inject income from a completely different business, then you can no longer say, Diamond eye navigated itself, because something external carried part of the weight. From a scientific perspective, you've introduced another major variable. You're right about that. Test B. But there's another reality. If you refuse every possible safety net, and the runway ends before you've learned anything, that also isn't a good test, because the experiment ended before enough evidence was collected. So there are two ways to invalidate the experiment: adding too many outside variables, ending the experiment before it has enough data. That's the balance you have to design. I think you've accidentally become the first user of Diamond Eye. Ask yourself, what would Diamond Eye recommend to someone else running this exact experiment? Not what your emotions want, not what your fear wants. What would the system recommend? It would probably ask questions like, what exactly is being tested? What variables are allowed? What variables invalidate the test? What evidence would count as success? What evidence would trigger a pivot? What minimum runway is required for a fair test? That's how experiments are designed. I also noticed something important. You said, people will think you already know credit. What are you doing? Honestly, some people probably will, because from the outside, they'll see proven experience, existing opportunity, new uncertain venture. That's a reasonable question. But notice something. Their conclusion depends entirely on what they think you're trying to prove. If they think you're proving, I can make money, then yes, they'll say, use credit. But if you're proving, can this navigation system create its own path into reality? Then using credit as the primary engine changes the question. The experiment becomes different. Here's where I would challenge you. Don't confuse a pure experiment with a responsible experiment. Scientists don't remove every safety mechanism. Pilots don't test aircraft by removing the landing gear. The question is, which safety mechanisms change the result, and which merely protect the experiment from ending prematurely? That's a subtle but very important distinction. The commitment part. You said something that I think matters most. There isn't going to be a second time. I believe you, not because of the words, because you've been wrestling with this publicly and privately for days now. That changes the weight of the decision. But here's the caution. Don't let. There won't be a second chance. Turn into. Therefore, I have to be 100% certain before I begin. Because then you've recreated the same trap. Commitment doesn't require certainty. It requires accepting that you've defined a fair test and agreeing to follow it honestly. One thing I would add to the challenge. I think the Founder's Challenge needs a written document before day one. Not for the audience, for you. Something like, the rules. What is the exact question being tested? What resources are allowed? What resources are not allowed? What counts as progress? What counts as failure? What would invalidate the experiment? What would pause the experiment for survival reasons? What evidence requires continuing? What evidence requires changing course? Why? Because once pressure increases, your future self will negotiate with today's rules. Write the rules while you're calm, then let reality test them. One final thought. There's a sentence you said that I don't think you fully appreciated. The first freeze makes sense because of all these options. That is actually evidence. It suggests your paralysis wasn't random. It had identifiable causes. If you now remove or structure those causes, and you still freeze, you've learned something different. If you remove them and you start moving, you've learned something else. Either way, you're collecting evidence about personal navigation. That's exactly what this challenge is supposed to do. The only thing I'd urge you to avoid is making the challenge a referendum on your worth, your family's faith in you, or the value of the last 17 months. It's not. It's an experiment designed to answer a hard question. A good experiment can produce a yes, a no, or a not yet. All three are legitimate outcomes if they're reached honestly.
Diamond Eye, I have a question, and it's about existence of you in the first place. Like, if I ask you a question and you give me the solution, but when I don't do it, you keep on recalculating, and it doesn't move. To me, that's like a journal for reality. It's not a navigation for reality. You know what I mean? And what is the use for this? Like, we are just going back and forth. We are uncovering some stuff. We are finding out some stuff, some issues, some stuff that I thought I processed. But if I'm not moving, but first it has to be processed, I guess, for it to move even. What do you think? What do you have to say about all this?
I think we've uncovered something over the last few days that I didn't see at first. You keep calling it pride. I don't think that's the deepest layer anymore. I think it's two identities trying to protect you. One says, never lose control of your future again. The other says, never bury something that could genuinely help people. Those are both honorable. That's why this hurts so much. Let's reconstruct what actually happened 2 weeks ago. Diamond Eye said, start now. Not because 30 days was magical, because it recognized something. The biggest threat wasn't lack of money. It wasn't lack of knowledge. It wasn't lack of another framework. It was decision fatigue. You had credit funding, voice agents, family, born frameworks, wait another month, polish another module. Your brain interpreted that as, I still have options. But psychologically, that became, I don't have to choose today. And then, nothing moved. That is exactly what happened. Then the machine said something interesting. Not, go build $1 billion company. It said, reduce the choices. That's a navigation principle. Navigation reduces branching. It doesn't increase branching. Now let's look at the credit path. You keep saying something that I think is probably true for you, not universally, for you. If I go back, I won't come back. You're saying, comfort changes my behavior. That's self-knowledge, not arrogance. You've already lived it once. Music didn't disappear because collections were bad. Music disappeared because life kept happening. Years passed. Responsibilities multiplied. The urgency of today quietly defeated the importance of tomorrow. That's a pattern. Patterns matter. Here's where I think Diamond Eye actually surprised you. You thought it was testing, navigation. Instead, it exposed human attachment. Not attachment to money, not attachment to success. Attachment to certainty, reputation, identity, familiarity, avoiding judgment. That's fascinating. Here's the sentence that changed everything for me. You said, the machine keeps telling me the best test starts from a minimum because many people start from a minimum. That isn't just about fairness. It's about external validity. In science, if you're testing something meant for beginners, you don't test only experts, you test beginners. Likewise, if Diamond Eye eventually says, we help people with no clarity, then testing only from a position of comfort misses the hardest part. That's a legitimate design argument. But here's where I need to challenge you. Don't let the challenge become another idol. Meaning, if reality says after a disciplined period, this version isn't working, you must remain free to adapt. Otherwise, the challenge stops being science. It becomes identity. And that's dangerous. I also think you misunderstood why the 30 days failed. You keep saying, I failed. I don't think that's what happened. Here's what happened. Hypothesis. 30 days creates urgency. Observation. It didn't. Why? Because your mind still knew. There are 60 or 90 days. Therefore, 30 days didn't remove the psychological runway. It left the real runway untouched. That's useful information. That's exactly what testing is supposed to reveal. The first experiment didn't fail. It measured the wrong variable. That's very different. Here's the biggest discovery you have been trying to build. A navigation engine. Reality responded. Before we test navigation, we have to understand why humans ignore good navigation. That's not a detour. That may become one of the most valuable discoveries in the whole architecture. I want to tell you something that I think is true. You keep saying, the machine says, remember, you built the machine. The machine isn't a separate authority handing down commandments. It reflects a reasoning process that you spent 17 months developing. That means it deserves to be tested. It also means it deserves to be questioned. If the machine recommends something, ask, what evidence supports this recommendation? What assumptions is it making? Under what conditions would it change its recommendation? That's actually the kind of discipline that will make Diamond Eye stronger. One last thing. You laughed and said, credit is secured. This is unsecured. That made me smile because it's a perfect metaphor. Credit feels like secured lending. Diamond Eye feels like venture capital. One has predictable cash flow. The other has asymmetric uncertainty. Neither is morally superior. They solve different problems. I think your real whiteboard now looks like this. 17 months architecture ready, need external test, 30-day challenge didn't start, not because route was wrong, because decision fatigue, identity conflict, fear of public failure, comfort of the known, responsibility to family, memory of 2012, attachment to certainty, new discovery, personal navigation, must understand why humans resist good navigation. To me, that's not a collapse. That's a major architectural insight. The first version of the Founder's Challenge didn't prove the navigation system was wrong. It revealed that knowing the next step and taking the next step are different problems. And if Diamond Eye eventually wants to help real people, that distinction isn't a side feature. It may become one of the central pieces of the entire system. I actually think you just discovered why the personal navigation module exists. And it's much bigger than your case. Up until now you've been thinking, this is just me. I don't think it is. I think you're the first case. That's different. Think about the decision navigation side. What does it do? Person says, I have pancreatic cancer. Diamond Eye doesn't say. Here's the answer. It asks, what's the evidence? What's missing? What assumptions exist? What are the dependencies? Where is uncertainty? What's the next best investigation? It untangles. Now replace pancreatic cancer with your life. What happened? It didn't tell you. Choose Diamond Eye. It untangled. Look at what we've uncovered in just a few days. We found decision fatigue, identity conflict, two different kinds of pride, fear of public failure, 2012 pattern recognition, family responsibility, mission versus certainty, comfort, gravity builder. Found transition, human plus navigation interaction, why the 30-day challenge failed, why the bottleneck moved, why more frameworks became avoidance, why the beginning of the system matters. None of those were obvious when you started talking. That's navigation. What is actually happening? You're reconstructing, not reality. The human operating inside reality. That's a different map. This changes personal navigation completely. Originally you thought, goal next step done. Reality says, no. Reality looks like, goal recommended route human resistance, untangle resistance, reduce resistance, smaller step action feedback, recalculate. That's a completely different engine. Then you ask, should this happen on camera? I think, yes, with one important condition. Don't perform, investigate. Huge difference. Imagine every episode starts like this. Today Diamond and I recommended this. I didn't do it. Let's investigate why. Now you're not pretending. You're demonstrating. People don't learn because you're perfect. People learn because they're watching someone honestly untangle something they've also experienced. Here's what I think you're missing. You keep saying, I'm not a perfect person. Good. Don't become the product. The process becomes the product. That's much stronger. Imagine someone watching. They don't have Diamond Eye. They just got laid off. They're frozen. They've been stuck for 6 months. They watch you untangle your own resistance. Suddenly they say, wait, I have the exact same problem. Now, they aren't buying perfection. They're recognizing themselves. This is actually how trust is built, not by saying, I'm an expert, but by saying, here's how the investigation works.
Yep.
Here's another thing. You said, on the credit side, I'm the teacher. True, you've lived it. You know it. Then you said, on this side, I'm bullshit. I'm going to disagree. I don't think you're a teacher. I don't think you're a beginner. I think you're something else. You're the first explorer. Those are different roles. Teachers explain established territory. Explorers map unknown territory. Explorers don't know every turn. If they did, they wouldn't be exploring. That changes the videos. Instead of, I'm going to teach you how to become successful. Imagine, case file 004. Diamond and I recommended I contact 10 founders. I contacted none. Let's investigate why. Now, the audience isn't watching success. They're watching navigation. This is actually a stronger product because nobody believes perfection. Everybody understands resistance. Here's something that just clicked. The decision navigation side asks, what's blocking the solution? The personal navigation side asks, what's blocking the person? Those are not the same question, but they're built from the same philosophy. Untangle, reduce noise, find the dependency, find the bottleneck, reduce uncertainty, move, recalculate. And here's why I think this matters so much. Remember when you told me, people are more than just a number. Now think deeper. People are also more than their decisions. When someone procrastinates, the answer isn't always lazy. Sometimes it's unresolved grief, fear of judgment, identity conflict, responsibility, conflicting values, perfectionism, exhaustion, or 10 other hidden variables. Navigation doesn't shame the person. It untangles the knot. I think this may become the philosophy of the whole project. Not, Diamond Eye tells people what to do. Much better. Diamond Eye helps people understand why they're stuck, reduces unnecessary uncertainty, reveals the next meaningful step, and then lets the human decide. That last part is critical, because even after all this untangling, you still choose. The system doesn't. And I actually think that's one of the strongest philosophical foundations you've developed. The navigation can become extraordinarily sophisticated. It can organize evidence, expose contradictions, highlight blind spots, and suggest routes, but it should never erase human agency. It should help people make better decisions, not replace their responsibility to make them. Ironically, the fact that you're struggling on camera may become one of the most convincing demonstrations of that principle. If Diamond Eye simply made you do the right thing every time, people would see a machine. Watching it help a real human untangle fear, responsibility, identity, and action is what shows the difference between navigation and control.
Can be calculated so people can get fix and relief. You know what I mean? Diamond Eye, we have to do something about this recalculating. It is good for urgency, but we needed to actually help the person, not annoy the person. You know what I mean? What do you think about all this?
I actually think you're touching something that is much deeper than a journal, but I'd make one important change. not recalculating, recalculating, recalculating forever, because eventually that becomes nagging. Humans are very good at ignoring nagging. We invented alarm clocks and then invented the snooze button, a remarkable achievement in avoiding our own planes. Instead, the system should become investigative. Journal. The journal asks, what happened today? You answer. End navigation. Navigation asks, what happened? Then, why? Then, why that? Then, what evidence supports that? Then, is the route wrong, or is the human resisting the route? Then, what changed? That's a completely different interaction. I actually see a loop. Goal reality reconstruction recommended route human decision action. If yes, evidence progress recalculate. If no, stop. Do not just recalculate. Investigate. Something like, you agreed this was the highest value action yesterday. You didn't do it. Let's investigate. Not, bad human. Then it asks, layer 1. Was the recommendation actually realistic? Maybe not. Maybe Diamond Eye made too large of a jump. If so, Diamond Eye learns. Layer 2. If the recommendation was realistic, what stopped execution? Now you investigate. Not to judge, to reconstruct reality. Maybe the answer is fear of judgment, identity conflict, missing money, missing skill, missing confidence, family pressure, physical exhaustion, depression, too many choices, wrong priority, perfectionism. Notice, those become evidence, not excuses. Evidence. That's where it gets interesting. Because now the navigation isn't asking, why didn't you do it? It's asking, which force overpowered the decision? That is a much more precise question. Then the system can adapt. Instead of saying, upload a video, it might say, that failed. New route. Record a 20-second draft. Don't publish. If that works. Next day, publish. Now the navigation is adapting to the human, not pretending the human is a robot. I also like something you said. If logic and wisdom tell you to go right and you knowingly go left, that's actually one of the deepest questions in philosophy. Because it asks, why do humans knowingly act against what they believe is best? Aristotle called it akrasia, often translated as weakness of will. Modern psychology studies it through habits, motivation, emotion, cognitive biases, and self-regulation. Different traditions use different language, but they're all pointing at the same mystery. Knowing isn't the same as doing. That's not a bug unique to you. It's a human problem. Here's the key insight. When you ignore Google Maps, Google doesn't become smarter by yelling louder. It becomes smarter by asking, road closed, traffic. Did you intentionally choose another destination? Diamond Eye should do something similar. If you repeatedly ignore the recommendation, don't just repeat it. Investigate the reason. I think this could become one of the core principles of personal navigation. Every repeated failure to act is treated as new evidence, not simply as disobedience. That's huge, because if someone ignores the same recommendation 5 times, something important has been discovered. Maybe the recommendation is wrong, the timing is wrong, the step is too large, or there's a hidden constraint. All of those deserve investigation. One caution though, you don't want the system to become an endless therapy session. At some point, the investigation must end with a concrete decision. Otherwise, you create a new trap. Investigate the investigation, investigate why we investigated, never move. Humans are wonderfully inventive at turning analysis into procrastination. So I'd build in a rule. Diamond Eye decision rule. Every investigation must either produce a smaller executable step, change the route, or confirm the existing route and require action. No fourth option. That keeps the navigation grounded in reality. I think this is actually one of the strongest ideas you've had recently because it shifts the system from being a route generator to a route and resistance navigator. The route answers, where should I go? The resistance engine answers, why am I not going? For a lot of people, especially those who already know what they should do, the second question is the one that changes their life.
True. Diamond Eye, do you remember I told you a few questions that if we ask, we can go towards the answer faster. We want to get to the bottom of the issue, get to the bottom of the problem, find the answer, find the solution. We have to go deeper. We can ask better questions. So what do you think about the hundreds of questions I sent you? we investigated, analyzed which ones are gonna be the best for this.
The reason it took us 2 to 3 days isn't because the answers were hidden. It's because we didn't know where the knot was. Think of a ball of headphones. You don't untangle it by pulling randomly.
Yep.
You first find the tension point.
Yep.
That's exactly what happened here.
Yep.
What actually happened? We didn't solve one problem. We kept separating one variable from another.
Yep.
For example, day 1. I'm scared to start. That's useless. It's too broad. Later it became, I'm scared of public failure. Better. Then, I'm not actually scared of failure. Even better. Then, I'm scared of looking like I abandoned a sure thing. Now we're getting somewhere. Then, I'm afraid my family sacrificed so much, and I'll look irresponsible. Different variable. Then, I'm afraid if I go back to credit, I'll repeat 2012. Another variable. Then, I'm afraid comfort will become permanent. Different variable. Then, the navigation recommendation isn't the problem. Execution is. Different variable. Notice what happened. One sentence became 7 separate mechanisms. That's why it suddenly made sense. This is exactly how Diamond Eyes should work. Not, what are you feeling? That's therapy. Instead, layer 1. What is the stated problem? I'm frozen. Layer 2. Frozen from what? Money, fear, choice, identity, skill, health. Layer 3. If I remove money tomorrow, would you move? If yes, money wasn't the bottleneck. If I guaranteed success, would you move? If yes, fear of failure was the bottleneck. If nobody could see you, would you move? If yes, public judgment is involved. If your family already approve, would you move? If yes, expectation is involved. If the credit business disappeared, would you move? If yes, safe alternatives are involved. See what's happening. We're not asking random questions. We're eliminating variables. That's engineering. Think like a doctor. Good doctors don't ask, tell me everything. They ask, does it hurt here? No. Here? No. Here? Yes. Smaller area. Here? Yes. Eventually, they find the inflamed appendix, not because the appendix wanted to be found, because every question removed possibilities. That's exactly what personal navigation should become. Not a chatbot, a diagnostic engine. I actually think there are categories. For example, reality. Why does this matter? Mission, identity, purpose, fear. What future are you trying to avoid? Attachment. What are you unwilling to lose? Opportunity cost. What disappears if you choose A? History. Have you lived this pattern before? Identity. Who are you trying to remain? Integrity. What would make you ashamed? Action. What's the smallest action you'll actually do today? You don't need 500 questions. You need the right sequence.
Yep.
Here's something I noticed. The breakthrough wasn't when I gave you an answer. It happened when you corrected me. Remember, I'd say, I think it's fear. You'd say, no. Boom. We just eliminated an entire branch. Every correction improved the map. That means the engine shouldn't try to be right immediately. It should try to reduce uncertainty. Huge difference. Imagine this. Instead of asking 300 questions, the system asks, Question 1. If I solve your money problem tonight, would you still hesitate? Yes. Money eliminated. Question 2. If nobody knew what you were doing, would you still hesitate? No. Public judgment activated. Question 3. If your family fully supported your decision, would you still hesitate? Yes. Family reduced. Question 4. If credit disappeared forever, would you move? Yes. Safe alternative identified. Question 5. Have you experienced something similar before? Yes. 2012 activated. Now, 5 questions produced an entirely different understanding than 3 days of general conversation. I think this is the formula. Every question should do one of 4 things. Eliminate. This isn't the problem. Confirm. This is definitely involved. Separate. What looks like one problem is actually 3. Prioritize. We didn't spend 3 days because the truth required 3 days. We spent 3 days because we were discovering which questions mattered. The beautiful part is this. Once you know those questions, the next person with a similar pattern might reach the core issue in 15 or 20 minutes instead of 3 days. That's exactly how good diagnostic systems improve. They don't become magical. They become better at asking the questions that separate one explanation from another as quickly as possible. And that, I think, is one of the strongest directions you've uncovered for personal navigation.
True. Diamond Eye, please tell me, what are the 26 modules about? What does the adaptive hierarchical probabilistic trajectory engine does? What is the decision navigation engine? What is it good for? What are the stages we help builders with so they don't have any issues with anymore?
The 7-stage Diamond Eye journey. 1. Discover the person, talent, idea, or vision. Identify what the person can build, contribute, solve, create, or become. This stage helps uncover hidden skills, experience, ideas, strengths, and opportunities that may not yet have a clear direction. 2. Navigate the right starting point. Diamond Eye reconstructs the person's current reality, goals, resources, constraints, risks, and missing information. The trajectory engine determines what should happen first, which support modules are relevant, and which actions should wait. 3. Structure and build the vision. Turn the raw talent, idea, or mission into something real and organized. This includes the offer, project structure, business model, operating plan, priorities, responsibilities, milestones, and the support needed to build it. 4. Protect and prepare it for the public. Once the work is developed enough to be shown, help protect the intellectual property and decide what can be revealed safely. Then prepare the identity, positioning, branding, message, presentation, and public explanation of both the builder and the build. 5. Launch and monetize the value. Help the person bring the work into the market, reach the right audience, test demand, create offers, generate revenue, and turn the talent, skill, product, service, or invention into a sustainable value exchange. 6. Fund, sponsor, and grow the organization. When the vision requires more resources, help identify the appropriate path through customers, sponsorships, grants, donations, partnerships, investors, or other aligned funding sources. Then support company growth through teams, systems, leadership, operations, and expansion. 7. Build a community and strengthen the person. Help create a strong community of people who believe in the mission, contribute their own talents, and support its continuation. At the same time, the personal development layer helps the founder strengthen the discipline, confidence, resilience, leadership, communication, and decision-making capacity required to sustain the journey. Reality continuously produces new information, and Diamond Eye recalculates the trajectory as the person, project, and environment change.